You know what time it is. What's up, everybody? Mattador here with a spoiler review for you of X-Men Apocalypse. That is a solid spoiler warning. Everything else said in this video will be full of spoilers for X-Men Apocalypse. If you'd rather watch a spoiler-free review, click right here. Alright, so everybody who doesn't want to hear spoilers is gone, right? Right? Alright, let's talk about this. So right off the bat, I feel like I have to defend this movie. I really enjoyed it. It seems like a lot of people didn't, and I'm not really sure why. I have heard some of the complaints. I'd like to try and address some of those, give you my thoughts on some of the things that have been said. Some I agree with, but it doesn't change my enjoyment of the movie. Some I disagree with, and some I'm just kind of right in the middle on it. So we'll see. I'm going to start with the things that I think are negatives about the movie, so that we can end with positive. These are some of the things that I wish I could change. Havoc's death. Havoc dies in this movie, and it seems like nobody cares except for Cyclops. And that's just for one scene. We do get one line from Mystique talking about how he was part of the first team, but no mention of his death. Nothing said to Cyclops about, "I'm sorry for your loss." It just would have been nice to have more of a reaction from everyone, especially Professor X. I mean, Havoc died trying to protect him. Maybe even have a scene with Quicksilver feeling guilty about him not being fast enough to save him. Even X-Men 3: The Last Stand had a funeral scene at the end. Number 2. Magneto is Quicksilver's father. There's quite a bit of time devoted to building up the fact that Quicksilver knows that Magneto is his father. He talks about it with his mom. He talks about it with Mystique. He plans to confront Magneto and tell him, "I'm your son." But it never happens. When it looks like it's about to happen, he decides not to for whatever reason. And I think that would have been a great scene for Magneto. I mean, he's lost everything, or so he thinks. And this would just be another thing to let him know you haven't lost everything. You still have family. You still have people to fight for. Ultimately, this would make Magneto switching sides at the end make more sense to me. Apocalypse destroying the world would ultimately be a bad thing because it would also destroy his son. Storm even asks him at the end of the movie, "Mystique says that Magneto is your father. Are you going to tell him?" And he just says, I might. A lot of time is spent leading up to it, but it amounts to absolutely nothing. It should have been a bigger deal, I think. It probably will be a big deal in future movies, but it doesn't do anything for this movie. The Wolverine cameo. Now, I know what you're thinking. Why do you have this on your list of things you wish you could change? But hear me out. Wolverine gets no dialogue in this movie unless you count grunts. I actually did like the action in the scene, but at the same time, it's kind of disappointing because this is the second to last time we're going to see Hugh Jackman as Wolverine. We only get this scene and one more movie with Hugh Jackman as Wolverine. And I'm going to be really sad to see him go. So I kind of wish that this scene wasn't in this movie, because it was kind of a waste of Hugh Jackman's time. This scene is cool, but at the same time, I wish that we would have seen Nightcrawler and Jean Grey and Cyclops take out all these bad guys. Finally start to learn how to control their power. And then, if they rescue the X-Men, it would make sense why they would take them along for the mission to take down Apocalypse. Because at the end of the day, they took a bunch of kids to take down a god. And that doesn't really make sense if they haven't had any scenes where they're fighting or they're learning how to control their powers or anything like that. I did like how Jean Grey put her hands on the side of Wolverine's head, just like she does in X-Men 1. You can really tell that Sophie Turner spent a lot of time studying Famke Janssen's performances and stuff like that. That was really well done, and the whole thing that she does with Wolverine was also really cool, but at the same time, it just felt forced. Like, he kind of felt shoehorned into this movie, and that's kind of sad. Alright. I love Nicholas Hoult as Beast. Can we talk about how every time Beast has appeared in a movie, his look has gotten progressively worse? Like, I think The Last Stand looked really good. First Class, I can see why some people were disappointed with it, but I still think it's better than what we're looking at now in Days of Future Past and this movie. But I will admit that that is a nitpick because Nicholas Hoult nailed the characterization of Beast, and that's way more important than how he looks. The last thing for things I wish I could change is the Four Horsemen. I just wanted more. For the most part in this movie, they just kind of stand around and they pose. They let Apocalypse do all the talking, which is great. You know, I know he's the main villain. He's the one we're here to see. But, like, what's the point of having these other four characters if you're not going to use them? Especially Psylocke. I mean, she barely had any line. None of them are given much of a backstory. They're hardly given any lines. They do get one fight scene, which is awesome, but it just wasn't enough. Magneto is the only one of the Four Horsemen that gets a lot of backstory, but at the same time, we already are familiar with this character. We've spent 2 other movies with him. All the stuff that's added here is just deepening the character that we already know. And then you've got these other characters that we don't know anything about, but we're spending all of our time with Magneto. I love the story that Magneto gets. I think it's one of the best parts of the movie. I just wanted that same kind of thing for all the Horsemen. But I guess if you do that, it's going to be like a 6-hour movie. With Psylocke, Angel, and Storm, we get a brief introduction. We get a scene where Apocalypse recruits them. We get to watch them stand around with Apocalypse. And they do get that one fight scene at the end. But I will say it's probably a good thing that the only bad thing I can say about him is I wanted more of him. I'll take that over an annoying character that there's too much of any day. Now let's talk about some of the things that I loved. Oscar Isaacs as Apocalypse. He did a really good job. He's a very talented actor. The character of Apocalypse was very interesting. He was very powerful. There's a lot at stake for him to be taken out. They move through his story pretty quickly at the beginning, and that loses a lot of people. It kind of moves through really fast without really explaining a whole lot of things. Basically what he does is he transfers his consciousness into another mutant's body along with all of his powers. So if he finds a mutant with a desirable ability, he will transfer his consciousness into that body so that he has both his power and that mutant's power. And at the beginning of the movie, they do this ceremony to transfer him into Oscar Isaac's body because he has a healing ability. So that explains how he's able to live for centuries. Other than that, it's not really ever made clear what his powers are. So I did a little bit of research. The main one that we see him use in the movie is he has the power to change the molecular structure of anything. He changes the structure of the wall and adds that person to it. Changes the structure of the floor and just sucks people up into it. Also, he goes deeper into a microscopic level and enhances the mutant X gene, which strengthens their mutant abilities. His whole plan is that he wants to take over the world, but it's not just because of the sake that he's evil. It's because he believes that he is the world's savior. He believes that he's the father of mutants, that they've all been led astray. They've all been following these blind leaders. So he thinks that he's the one that's going to restore the world to what he believes is the proper order. He needs to save all of his children from humans, from systems, from their weapons, and all sorts of things like that. And I don't want to be one to point fingers or anything, but the fact that he rises in this movie is 100% Moira MacTaggart's fault. She was the one that followed those dudes down into the cave where the Apocalypse Pyramid was. You see in the very beginning of the movie, the sun is involved in the ceremony. You know, he pulls the curtain and the sun shines on that pyramid, and that's what helps them begin the ceremony. So when she follows them down in there, she does not put the scaffolding back over the hole, and the sun shines down in it, and that's why Apocalypse comes back to life in the 80s. I have some advice for you, Moira MacTaggart. Don't follow people who are in cults trying to get Apocalypse to come back to life. Number 2, if you are going to follow them, you cover your tracks. You leave things the way you found them. That hole was going to be covered during the whole ceremony and Apocalypse wouldn't have risen. It's your fault that he did. All the destruction that he causes, that's on you, Moira. I have heard some complaints about Apocalypse. I kind of want to talk about them a little bit. His voice is altered in almost every single scene. Yeah. And it sounds awesome. He's not tall enough. So? I guess if that's the worst thing you can pick out about somebody's performance, then they're doing a pretty good job. Side note, what is it about X-Men castings and height issues? First, Hugh Jackman is too tall to play Wolverine, and now Oscar Isaacs is too short to play Apocalypse? Who cares? Man, they both did an amazing job regardless of their height. Everything he says is theatrical and dramatic. Yeah, I don't have much to say about that. I can see why it bothers you. Doesn't really bother me. I thought it was kind of cool, but this is one of those I don't really have that much of an opinion on. He looks weird. Yeah, he does. Let's talk about Magneto. Michael Fassbender is an amazing actor. What an amazing performance. This man can do no wrong at this point. Now, at the beginning of the movie, he's laying low. He doesn't want to be recognized as Magneto or Eric Lyncher. He's doing this to protect his family. Eventually, he does use his powers at work. He gets recognized. The police come and they're going to arrest him in front of his daughter. Some stuff goes down. Both times I've seen this movie, when that arrow gets let go, the entire theater goes silent, and you can always hear one girl go, because everybody in the audience is thinking the same thing. Please no. Please don't do this. His family isn't there for very long, but you're already invested in them. You're already happy that Magneto has finally found happiness, and you just don't want that arrow to do what it's about to do, but it does. So he's sitting there holding them. He picks up the necklace, and I'm like, I hope that all of you police officers have made peace with God, because you are dead. So for that reason, it makes sense why he would join Apocalypse, because he feels like he has lost everything. It makes sense why he would want to destroy the world, especially the humans who have destroyed his life over and over and over again. And I admit, some of that is well deserved because of his choices, but Magneto doesn't see it that way. It's what he has always wanted. You know, Charles has always tried to convince him that there's good in people, but he has seen the worst in people time and time again. He saw it in the Holocaust. He saw it in Sebastian Shaw. He saw it in Trask. And now he's seen it in the policeman who just killed his wife and daughter. He knows that it's just a matter of time until everything that he's experienced starts happening to every mutant on the planet. Magneto wants vengeance for his wife and daughter, for his parents, for every other mutant brother and sister that has experienced loss at the hands of humans who hate and fear them. He also wants people to know that if a war does start between humans and mutants, it ain't gonna end well for the humans. So then enter Apocalypse, who wants the exact same thing. It makes sense that they would join up together. I will say this, Magneto has one of the most interesting story arcs in this movie, and I love that about it. It's very well crafted and well directed. And I love how Charles continues to come to him and try to convince him that there's still good in people. I've always loved the relationship between Charles and Eric. You know, how they're best friends, but they constantly fight. They constantly disagree about how humans and mutants should live together, or if they should. I think both characters present a very relatable side to the argument. I think that everybody either relates more with Magneto or Charles Xavier. It's very, very understandable why each character feels the way that he does. And that's what I love about the relationship so much. Let's talk about Mystique. Let me start off by saying that I love Jennifer Lawrence. I think she's a very talented actress. I think that she has really owned the role of Mystique, especially in Days of Future Past. But it just seems like in this movie, some scenes she was just bored in. I'm not 100% convinced that some of the lines that she gave in this movie were not just recycled from the Hunger Games movies. The biggest complaint I hear about her is that she's not blue for the entire movie. A lot of people think that the reason for that is because Jennifer Lawrence just doesn't want to go through the makeup process, which I don't blame her. It sounds awful. But I will say this, it doesn't really bother me that much because they had story to go with it. An argument could be made that the story was crafted that way to accommodate her, but the fact is that they had story to go with it, so it doesn't bother me. She's known as a hero now because she's the one that stopped Magneto from assassinating the president. But she doesn't want to be known as a hero because, let's face it, she's not a hero. In this movie, mutants are common knowledge, and she's kind of become the poster child for mutant rights. But mutants aren't getting those kind of rights. She says to Charles, I don't want to be the poster child for a world that doesn't exist. People still hate and fear mutants. They're just more polite about it. So she's in hiding. She's trying to lay low after the events of Days of Future Past just like Magneto is at the beginning of the movie. I don't think that she's not blue because J-Law doesn't want to wear the makeup. I really don't think that's it. I think it was actually part of the story, so it doesn't bother me that much. I will say this about her in this movie. I think she's a really good bridge between Charles and Eric, the peacekeeper between the two of them. She helps Eric not to be so extreme, and she also helps Charles to realize it's okay to hope for the best, but also prepare for the worst. You need to be prepared for the bad things that can and will happen, because all we have is 9 movies of history that says that things like that will happen. I want to talk real quickly about the guy that plays William Stryker. His name is Josh Hellman. I think he's done an amazing job as young William Stryker. Like, he's really young, but he's still full of violence and hatred. Like, you just look at this dude and you're like, he's up to something bad. In real life, he's probably the nicest guy, but dang, he looks evil. Those eyebrows are crazy. They talk about Cyclops, Jean Grey, and Nightcrawler. It's hard to talk about one of them without talking about the others, because for most of the movie, these 3 are together. And that's a good thing. They work very well together, not only as characters, but actors. You know, they have really good chemistry together. I love how the optic blasts look in this movie. They look dangerous and rugged and jagged and unstable. I just love it. They're so powerful. I also love how they come together in the time of a tragedy, you know. Scott's brother just died. They're in that helicopter on their way to rescue these other X-Men, and Cyclops kind of breaks down. It should have been me that died. He was the one that was going to do something with his life, and Jean comforts him. That's not how he felt. He believed that you were going to be the one to go on and do amazing things. That's why he brought you to this place. And he says, how do you know how he felt? She says, I know how everybody feels. Nightcrawler is praying for him and everything. So they come together and they really become part of this team, part of this family in a moment of tragedy. And I love that. That's the X-Men to me. They're a family. They look out for each other. They're there for each other. I think that scene was very, very well done. I just think there should have been more like it. I've kind of already mentioned this before, but I also wish that they got a little bit more fight scenes. They understand and learn to control their powers a little bit better. But just like I said with the 4 Horsemen, if the worst thing I can say about them is that there isn't enough of them, then that's a good thing. Now I want to talk about James McAvoy as Professor X. I've said before, this may not be my favorite X-Men movie. I'm still trying to decide that, but I will say that this movie has some of my favorite all-time Professor X moments. The only thing that could come close to topping it, when James McAvoy and Patrick Stewart came face to face and they had their scene together. That might be my favorite Professor X moment, but he definitely has a lot of great ones in this movie as well. He's usually the coach. He provides guidance and advice for our heroes from afar, like Yoda. But in this movie, in a couple of scenes, he gets to be the quarterback. And I think that that's awesome. You know, he gets a lot of funny dialogue between him and Moira. And I gotta say, like, I've always loved James McAvoy as Professor X, even in First Class. Like, you can tell he's really young and inexperienced, but he's well on his way to being every bit the man that Patrick Stewart's Professor X was. You know, and I just love that we're getting to see some growth. Instead of seeing him at his peak where he's perfect all the time, we're getting to see him grow and make mistakes and learn. McAvoy does an amazing job. He brings such joy and compassion to the role. So the scene where Apocalypse uses Cerebro, he taps into Charles's mind to control every human being that has nuclear weapons, turns the key, and sends every single nuke up into space. And I love how they say, we're not sure if this is an act of war or an act of peace, but this is just a taste of what Apocalypse could do if he had Professor X's powers, which he wants. That's his plan. He's going to use Professor X as his next host body so that he can have the power to read and control minds. Now stop and think for a minute how deadly Apocalypse would be if he could read and control minds. Nobody would be able to stop him, and if they tried...
Continue smoking that in here, and you'll spend the rest of your days under the belief that you're a 6-year-old girl.
So they kidnap Charles, and Apocalypse sends a message to every human being on the planet through Charles. But he manages to get a secret message to Jean Grey, telling her, hey, Jean Grey, you need to assemble the the X-Men, and you need to come get me, because if Apocalypse does this, everybody's dead. There's no more anything. So because of this, there's a lot at stake for the X-Men to be able to take Apocalypse down. And what we get is one of the greatest X-Men fight scenes that I think has been in any of the movies thus far. This is what James McAvoy had to say about the X-Men in an interview.
I think they're all pretty bad superheroes. They're all pretty rubbish superheroes when they're on their own. They are, though. They're not very good at doing the superhero thing. They've been trying for like 9 movies now. And they can only really do it when they come together and unify. And it's not just like a team. It's not like a team of superheroes like all the other movies that are really good. It's like a family. And I think what I love about this film, it's always been about family, but what I love about this film is that this one really owns that and really references that. They talk about the fact that they are family. And if they don't sort of put their differences aside and, you know, sit down for a good Sunday meal, then the whole world's going to end. So, yeah, stay close to your family, everyone.
I completely agree. This has always been what I've loved about the X-Men. I've always been very close with my family as well, so maybe that's why I love the X-Men so much. I like to picture that me and my cousins are all fighting crime together. We all using our mutant abilities to stop worldwide threats and stuff like that. First of all, you got Nightcrawler going through this maze of a temple looking for Charles Xavier so that he can teleport him out of there. Angel shows up and they have a round 2 of their fight from the beginning. Angel grabs him by the tail, so anywhere Nightcrawler tries to teleport to, Angel comes with him. We've also got Beast versus Psylocke, which is another amazing fight. I said in one of my other reviews that her telekinetic katana looks like a purple lightsaber, you know, and it's chopping through cars. It also reminds me of the bound sword spell from Skyrim. Purple sword appears right in your hand. We've also got Storm versus Cyclops. You know, they're throwing lasers and lightning at each other and it's hitting right in the middle, kind of like Priori Incantatem. You've also got Mystique and Quicksilver trying to help Eric see and understand the bigger picture. She says, "Eric, I know you've suffered. I know you've lost your family, but you're not alone. You still have family. You still have people that care for you and want to save you." Then you've got Apocalypse trying to do the whole body switch thing with Charles Xavier, and in the process, Charles loses his hair. A buddy of mine said that, you know, when that happened, he should have just instantly transformed into Patrick Stewart. I don't know about that, but it's what he said. I will say this, though. James McAvoy looks good, bald and in a wheelchair and in a suit, but I digress. So Nightcrawler finally finds Professor X. He teleports him out of there before the ceremony can be completed. He also goes around and he finds all of our other heroes and teleports them back into the jet. They're trying to fly away, and then Angel and Psylocke get into the jet. So Nightcrawler, everybody puts a hand on him, and he teleports everybody out of there all at once. And I'm just going to say this plan does not work without Nightcrawler and his teleportation ability. I don't know how you would do this without him. So before they go, Jean Grey uses her telekinesis on the jet controls, and it does a nosedive. Psylocke gets out of there, but Angel doesn't. And Angel dies. Apocalypse comes up to him, calls him a weakling. And unfortunately for him, Storm overhears this. So then Quicksilver comes up to him, kind of looks him up and down, punches him in the face. He runs around to the other side of him, punches him again. He goes flying. He runs around again and punches him. It's like he's playing ping pong against himself. Except for Apocalypse is the ball. But Apocalypse eventually reaches out with the ground and captures his foot so he can't run. And then he kicks his knee sideways, breaks his leg, and then he says, "Try running now." I mean, he didn't really say that, but I think he should have. Side note, I think that this would have been the perfect moment for Magneto to switch sides if he had just known that Quicksilver was his son. Like, that would have been so impactful. Like, that's why he chooses to switch sides, to protect his son. So Apocalypse is standing there with Quicksilver. Psylocke walks up, and he tells Psylocke to end this weakling, but it's Mystique. So she takes the katana and slices him in the throat, but he heals. So he grabs her by the throat, and which Storm also sees, and so Storm ultimately changes sides because of the way that Apocalypse treats Angel, Quicksilver, Mystique, which is her hero. So Apocalypse is calling Charles out. He's holding Mystique by the throat. "Come out here, Charles. Where are you? Are you going to let these weaklings die in your place? Be the better man. Give yourself up for them." And he's about to do it. But instead, he uses his telepathy. He gets inside Apocalypse's mind, and he walks up to Apocalypse. "Welcome to my world." He punches him in the face. Apocalypse falls back a little bit, and he walks up to him again. He goes, "This is my house." Punches him in the face. And the fact that this fight takes place in Charles's mind in no way takes away the awesomeness for me. So while this is going on, some of the other X-Men decide that they're going to try to distract him. Storm's throwing lightning at him, Cyclops is shooting the lasers at him, but it's not working. He's easily blocking it. Beast even runs up and he just kind of like, get out of here, son. And it's right around this time that Apocalypse is kicking Charles's butt. So he removes the wall of the house that they're hiding in, and he's walking towards him, and all of a sudden this big metal beam just stabs into the ground like boom, and then another one, boom. I know that it's cheesy, but I love it. I can't help it. It was so great to see that. Apocalypse turns around to Magneto and he's like, "You're betraying me?" He looks at all of them. "No, I betrayed them." Again, this would have been even more impactful and meaningful if he was talking about Quicksilver being his son, but he doesn't know that. They didn't capitalize on that for whatever reason. Magneto starts pelting him with all of this metal. Storm lights him up with lightning. Cyclops blasts him with the lasers. Charles is getting beat inside the mind. Apocalypse says to him, like, "It's over, Charles. You're beaten." He says, "You will never win because you are alone. And I am not." I love that line. I love that he says that to him. Like, that's the reason that he's going to lose. Because the X-Men work better together. They're a family. And then Jean shows up inside Charles's mind to help him in the fight. And Charles is saying stuff to her like, "Don't be afraid. Don't hold back. Just let go, Jean." And she becomes the Phoenix. And that makes perfect sense to me because she's the only one that could possibly stand up to a god like Apocalypse. Because she's basically a goddess. She breaks his defenses so he can't block everybody's attacks. Magneto turns him into a pincushion with his metal. Cyclops hits him with the laser. Storm hits him with the lightning. And then she unleashes the fire of the Phoenix on him and literally peels the flesh from his bones. Obviously, you guys can tell that I really enjoyed this movie. I loved all of the symbolism. I loved how they're a family, how they're a team. I know that it has its problems. I know it's not a perfect movie, but I don't think that those are enough to make me not enjoy the movie. The good outweighs the bad by a lot for me. Obviously, I wasn't able to talk about everything in this video, so in the comments I want to know, what was your favorite part of the movie? Also, what do you think / hope is going to happen in the next movie? I hear it's supposed to be set in the 90s. And I'm just saying, it is past time for you to get the 90s cartoon theme song into these movies. Like, I heard somewhere that it was in the credits for Apocalypse, but get it in the real movie. Like, the song you're using now is already so close to the 90s theme song, you might as well just use the 90s theme song. And if this movie's set in the 90s, that is the perfect opportunity to get it in there. So Fox, make it happen. And don't let us down. Anyways, guys, hope you enjoyed this review. Have a great day, fam. Peace out.